Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello everyone, my name is DJ, this is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and Core Set 2021 has a lot of really cool new commanders. And today, we're going to take a look at Radha, Heart of Keld. You know, landfall and land matters are a really popular strategy in our format. I love my Muldrotha land matters deck, and I've seen Lord Windgrace and Omnath Locus of Rage decks doing great stuff, but I think that we need to take a close look at Radha because she offers a whole new and unique option for landfall commanders. Radha, Heart of Keld is 1 red-green for a 3/3 legendary elf warrior. As long as it's your turn, Radha has first strike. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands from the top of your library. 4 red-green, Radha gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. I think the first thing that we're most attracted to is playing lands off the top of our library. We've seen this with Courser of Kruphix and Oracle of Moldiah, and we know how powerful this is. The last ability, where you can pump up Radha equal to the number of lands you control. Man, this makes me really wish that Radha had Trample. Don't worry, we can fix that in these colors. First strike will help her survive combat more, so she can turn sideways really, really well. Commander damage is going to be a thing in this deck. Radha is card advantage engine and a win condition all in one, and she comes down starting at just 3 mana. I mean, this is a really good choice to helm our landfall deck. Now, some of you might be thinking, we have Omnath Locus of Rage. It is the Gruul landfall commander. And what does Radha have compared to Omnath? And actually, I feel like Omnath is sort of a payoff commander, where Radha is sort of a get you there commander, and different people will enjoy different playstyles. Omnath also is a ton of mana to get onto the battlefield, and sometimes tuned Omnath decks feel like combo decks where all you're doing is getting a bunch of elementals and shooting someone in the face. Radha might be a commander that actually has you developing your board so that your whole deck functions a little bit better. Ramp is important in every commander deck, and even more so in a land matters deck. Ramping on turn 2 is going to be particularly strong in this deck because then we can play Radha on turn 3 and then look at the top of our library to hit our land drop from the top. We want to be able to be playing lands off the top of our library as often as we can because that's card advantage. Rampant Growth, Into the North, Nature's Lore, Farseek, all this stuff ends up being really good. I think the best piece of ramp in this deck is Secure a Tribe Elder. That's right, Soul Ring, I'll fight you. Okay, it's because it's a 2 mana ramp spell, but also shuffle effects end up being really important because if we know what's on top of our library, we know what we don't want, and we can shuffle it away with a card like Secure a Tribe Elder, or fetch lands, or other ways to draw or manipulate the top of our library. This is a powerful effect. I put Tectonic Reformation here because we might be able to have the ability to leverage cards from our hand to dig deeper in our library so that we're always playing lands off the top. Get card advantage wherever possible. We also want the ability to play multiple lands per turn. We got a bunch of ways to do this in these colors. Azusa Lost But Seeking got a much needed reprint in Core 2021, so hopefully the price on that goes down and we can play 2 extra lands on each of our turns. Menand and Wildborn are also really solid. They also have ability to give Radha Trample, which is something that we noticed that we needed in this deck. Dryad of the Elysian Grove and Wayward Swordtooth are both creatures for 2 and a green that give us an extra land drop each turn. Dryad also makes all of our lands mountains for that fringe Valakut play that we might have in this deck. Oracle of Moldiah is famous in our format, gives us an extra land drop, and also Radha's Text, where you can play lands off the top. It does actually have us reveal the top card, so we don't get that secret information that we get with Radha. This is also getting reprinted in Jumpstart, so hopefully its price finally comes down. Also, Exploration is an enchantment for a green that lets us play an extra land each turn, and it hasn't been reprinted recently, so the price is really creeping up. One quick note, Burgeoning is a card that kind of helps, but not really. We want to be playing lands off the top of our library, and Burgeoning lets us take a land from our hand and put it into play. That's not the effect we exactly want. You know, I just mentioned a bunch of cards here that are pretty pricey. I know that some of them might be coming down, but they're not going to be cheap by any means. And so it takes a deck that should be fun and relatively budget and makes it unattainable for a lot of people. You can totally cut a lot of these effects and you can replace them with more budget-friendly versions. Gear per Orrery lets all players play an extra land, but you might be able to leverage that more. Rites of Flourishing has everyone drawing an extra card and playing an extra land, and Baduka Gardener lets us put an extra land only from our hand into play, but also flips into a crazy big creature. You're going to notice that these budget options are not as strong as the just play an extra land every turn. But if you take this tiny group hug angle, you can make your deck a little bit more interesting than these other traditional, let's just ramp decks, and it can save you a lot of money in the process. All right, we've talked a lot about lands. Our lands are extra important, so we got to pay attention to them in a landfall deck. They give us extra utility. They almost function like a spell, especially when they're triggering landfall all the time. We also need more lands than usual. I'm running 42 in this deck, and well, one thing that's really great is that you can tune your land base to your meta. You can add lands that interact with graveyards if you're facing against graveyard decks, or lands that help fight against counter magic, or even go with more budget lands because the mana base can be incredibly expensive in these decks. One particularly strong land in this deck is regrettably a little bit expensive, and that's fetch lands. The better the fetch land, usually the more expensive it is, but it lets us shuffle the top of our library, see new things, get an instant speed landfall trigger. There are budget options out there: Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, the Panoramas, even the slow fetches like Mountain Valley could be worth including. You know, all of these things can really help this deck function smoothly, even if your lands are entering the battlefield tapped. We can also do stuff like Field of Ruin or Ghost Quarter. Those can trigger landfall and get a shuffle and answer opposing lands. Our lands can also have really powerful effects. Field of the Dead makes 2/2 zombies. That's a real card going in every time you get a land drop. Or Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. That's a lightning bolt every time you have a land drop. These are real effects. I know there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to get there, but we will get there because we're a deck built around getting lands onto the battlefield. Kessig Wolfrun, Skarg the Rage Pits, and Rogue's Passage. Kessig Wolfrun taps for a colorless, has an activate ability of X and a red and a green. You can pump your creature by as much mana as you want to put into it and give it trample. Trample's the big thing, but we do like the ability of pumping up our relevant creatures. Skarg the Rage Pits gives trample, only +1/+1, but trample is so key. You know, you don't even need to give a creature trample if you have Rogue's Passage. You can just get it in for damage no matter what. All right, let's talk about some payoff cards. First, we have the cards that will care about the total number of lands we have in play. Uvenvald Hydra and Multani Yavimaya Avatar. Uvenvald Hydra is 6 CMC, fetches whatever land you want, and has a power and toughness equal to the number of lands you have on the battlefield, and most importantly is being reprinted in Jumpstart. So great. By the way, also Reach, that's trapped people before. Also, Multani Yavimaya Avatar is just a big creature too. 6 CMC, counts the lands we control and those in your graveyard for power and toughness. That and in your graveyard is so huge because we have fetch lands and we have cycling lands and all sorts of utility in our mana base. So this is going to be something huge. It's also really recursive. We can return Multani from our graveyard to our hand by paying 2 and returning 2 lands to our hands. In our deck, we really won't mind returning lands to our hand because we are going to have so many extra land drops anyways. Multani also has Reach too. What's going on with the Reach? Green creatures love Reach. And Trample. So these two creatures are so big, they're going to go really well in this deck with Radha. Rubble Hulk is a big creature that will almost never cast because its real ability is Blood Rush. That means that we can play it kind of like an instant from our hand. So for 1, a red and a green, we can give target attacking creature +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands we control. That means that we're going to be doubling up the power of some of these big land-based creatures and increasing that pump effect that we have on Radha. So good. It really just means that we can make our creatures really huge out of nowhere. Speaking of making your creature really big out of nowhere, we have Berserk. This card has killed so many people so often. People really fixate on the downside. It's like, what? Your creature dies afterwards. Like, if you kill your opponent, it's totally worth it. I mean, just imagine you're attacking with your commander and you activate Radha. You know, all you need is 7 or 8 lands on the battlefield and suddenly you activate it, berserk it, and they're dead. Okay, that is pretty powerful. All right, we also have a lot of really good landfall payoffs. Nesting Dragon is so fun. 5/4 dragon for 5, really great. Landfall trigger, incredibly strong. It makes these little eggs that when they die, they turn into 2/2 flying dragons with fire breathing. That means you can pump a red into them to give them +1/+0. It really means that you're going to have all these eggs on the battlefield and people aren't going to want to board wipe you because they board wipe and suddenly your eggs turn into a bunch of dragons. And just imagine getting a dragon every time you make a land drop. It's so good. Omnath Locust of Rage also gives you something for every land drop. I know I was just talking about how good 2/2 flying dragons are, but come on, Omnath puts in 5/5 elementals. And when they die, they get the lightning bolt of creature or player. They're so good. That's why people really like Omnath leading this deck, but 7 mana is so much to get Omnath on the battlefield. I think that deck feels so sluggish. I think Radha is going to be way more based on acceleration, but Omnath definitely belongs in this deck. Tunneling Geopede, Scapeshift, Boundless Realms. We really get to the unassuming little insect, Tunneling Geopede. It's 2 and a red for a 3/2 that simply does 1 damage to each opponent on each landfall trigger. It's a trifle, really. But this little guy doesn't seem like a threat. But he is. Our opponents aren't going to worry about it, but then we're just going to play these huge spells that get tons of lands onto the battlefield, or the damage will just add up out of nowhere. Scapeshift, Boundless Realms, yeah, this can dump tons of lands onto the battlefield, and we know we already want lands for all of our other landfall, for our commander, for our creatures that get big with more lands. But Tunneling Geopede is just this little machine gun that pays us off for these land drops. So how does this deck play? It seems pretty simple, right? We have ramp and then ramp payoffs. That's the deck, and that feels very commandery. But really, this deck is going to start off ramping super early. We really want to ramp on 2, play Radha on 3, and then hit a land off the top of our library, hopefully. That means that we're going to be accelerating faster than almost all of our opponents because we have a critical mass of lands, and we have the ability to get them on the battlefield. In the mid game, we're going to want to keep developing our mana, but really work on establishing a board with 1 or 2 big threats. We're not worried about dumping our hand. We might have the mana to just put everything on the battlefield, but that's not what we're about. We want to keep getting card advantage by playing off the top of our library and sculpting the top of our library so that we have our best threats possible. We want to have a board presence, but we also want recursion and balance so that we can keep deploying after board wipes or after we're interrupted. In the endgame, we'll want Radha back out as a potential win condition. It's so cool because she comes out early as a card advantage sort of ramp thing, and then in the late game, it's like, oh no, she attacks too. We have several ways of giving her trample, like Kessig Wolf Run, Mina and Den, the brand new Garruk's Uprising from Core Set 21. We're actually going to be putting tons of huge threats down alongside Radha, and we're going to be smashing our opponents. This deck is prepared to play the long game. Chandra's Ignition is a board ripe under normal conditions, but if we play it on one huge creature like Radha, Beanstalk Giant, that Multani, anything, we could just deal game-ending damage to each opponent. We can also put our lands to use by using direct damage spells like Comet Storm. This kind of removal can be focused in the early game, but when you have a lot of mana, sometimes you can just burn the table out. This deck is really fun to pilot for both experienced and new players. I think one of the best things about it is that it really has minimal feel bad times. You know, people usually have a bad time at Magic when they get stuck. They can't do anything. This deck will help you hit your land drops, give you card advantage so you have things to do. It has big, strong threats that people need to answer and recursion so that you're always in the game. And your commander matters. Radha is strong and resilient and really, really fun to play. Thank you so much for joining me for this Radha deck tech. I want to thank Jevin. He is amazing and is the resource for this deck tech. You should check out his articles at edhrec.com. I'll put a link in the description. I also want to thank Cool Stuff Inc. They sponsor the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. If you want to get some Jumpstart cards, some Core 2021 cards, look at Cool Stuff Inc. If you use the coupon code JUMBO5, you'll get 5% off your order. I also want to thank my patrons. They support me every single day. Thank you, patrons. And thank you for watching this video. I can't wait to do more Core 2021 and Jumpstart 2. There's so many commanders. I can't cover them all. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.